One of the things I would really love doing would be to review movies and anime. And because it's something I would love doing, YouTube looks down at me and says, no. Because nothing is more annoying than to work 12 hours to edit, to think about the things you're going to say, to write a script, and then to have all of them taken down by a copyright claim. And this is why I usually try to stay away from movies and anime. But in this case, I will make an exception. And unfortunately, I will not be able to show you any clips from the movie, either than still images, because the copyright claim is strong. It is so strong that if I were to show you even 2 or 3 seconds of this movie, it would be blocked worldwide. As such, we have to use whatever we have at our hands. Now, The Demolition Man is a movie from 1993, and it manages to predict quite a lot of things about the future, including self-driving cars, smartphones, voice activation on computers, virtual reality sex with multiplayer. But besides some technological advances, it also manages to talk about certain social issues and themes that in 1993 would have been considered ridiculous, quite comical in nature, because of how outlandish they were. You see, when the movie begins, the concept of no-go zone is being explored. In the case of the fictional movie, Los Angeles has become such a place where the police doesn't even bother to go in there anymore to police the citizens, where the government has completely given up on the people of Los Angeles. And it's only when a convicted killer by the name of Phoenix decides to kidnap certain decent, upstanding, moral citizens outside of Los Angeles that the police actually starts taking notice and decides to go in there on force in order to rescue the civilians. Now, back in 1993, the idea of a first world nation to completely lose control of a certain part of its territory was unfathomable. In fact, this was probably included because it's so comical in nature that the police would simply not care or not want to go into an area. However, today, YouTuber Angry Foreigner has talked about a Swedish journalist who went viral by visiting one of these popularly dubbed no-go zones. And despite the fact that he had a police escort, he was actually abused, both verbally and physically. And he raised awareness that these things do happen in certain parts of the world that represent first world nations, where the police not only refuse to go in there, but they also advise people who aren't from those places not to go in order to prevent an escalation of the situation. Now, Wikipedia also has 2 entries that talks about France and Germany, where a person by the name of David Ignatius has published in the New York Times that such places do exist in France and are described by the police as no-go zones. Another thing that the movie manages to predict with concerning accuracy is the concept of shitposters. You see, back in 1993, the internet was still young, and the idea that people are going to be able to use the internet to inform millions, if not hundreds of millions of people was quite outlandish. Let alone the idea that someone might even try to censor things that are posted on the internet. Yet this movie manages, using the technology at the time, to create a version of shitposters. We're talking about people who cannot find a job in civilized society and are forced to live underground in the canals and the sewers. But they do use their freedom in order to try to send messages towards the outside world. Now, these messages aren't being posted on a computer. No, they are used as graffiti on a wall. And the censors, the establishment, immediately deletes the graffiti, even though the message in itself wasn't dangerous or harmful. It just got people to think. The message, life is hell, suggests that there might be something else that the establishment isn't telling people, and as such, it is swiftly deleted. Now, the idea of internet censorship is quite new. 4 or 5 years ago, people would definitely be abhorred by the simple concept that even if you do something that's perfectly legal and you're not breaking any laws, you will have major multi-billion-dollar corporations stamp on it and make sure that you can't post again. For example, Paul Joseph Watson, which hasn't broken any law as far as I know, is not allowed on Facebook. But not only that, simply posting videos of him or talking about him in a positive manner could get you banned from Facebook as well. And this is not something that only exists on Facebook. Other social media companies do it. And for the fact that this was predicted in 1993 in a way is quite funny. But what's even more funny is that while we're watching the movie and we notice the main villain, Phoenix, who is killing people, blowing things up, doing all sorts of chaos and havoc throughout the city, the ruling class is saying that the biggest danger to society is not the madman that is killing folk, but it's the shitposters. And this has to remind me of the United Kingdom, which, if you look at London, they're having a big problem with the knife epidemic, as the media likes to say. And yet, the mayor of London is diverting millions of dollars and resources to police officers to police shitposters on the internet. And within 1 year, they managed to catch less than 5 people, and all of those millions of taxpayer money were spent for nothing, I guess. So I can't help but think about Demolition Man and make a parallel with what is happening in London. Oh, and by the way, I understand I can't be a real movie critic unless I talk about the themes. The thing I hate about themes in a movie is that you can literally say whatever you want and push it in a way that it sticks, and it kind of makes it seem like the author intended it. So let me show you just how dumb talking about themes are. The theme of this movie is the warning over the illegal foreigner. You see, Mr. Phoenix wasn't supposed to be released. So the moment he gets out of prison, he is an illegal person because he's illegally there. He should be back in cryostasis. Now, I know he is an American, so you might think, well, you can't really call him a foreigner. But he is a foreigner in the state that he is from another time. He comes from another culture. He comes from the culture of Los Angeles, as we saw in the beginning of the movie, which is incredibly incompatible with the utopia, the progressive utopia that the movie takes place in. And this is in stark contrast with the legal foreigner, played by Stallone, which is released and given the okay by the authorities. Do you see how stupid themes are? Like, I really hated when critics talk about them because you can make literally any sort of claim and you can just inject your own politics into a movie that's not really about your politics. But what I also wanted to talk about before ending this video is the creation of a culture where crime is going at an all-time low, and when you inject an element into that culture that hasn't grown up in it and is thus not socially conditioned in order to follow all the laws, the nature of brutality that Phoenix is capable of is unable to be controlled by the local police officers. They literally do not know what to do or how to interact with such a person. To the point where police officers are not trained anymore to handle such dangerous criminals. Instead, they look on what appears to be a smartphone, which constantly has to give them indications on how to do their job. And this reminds me of a clip that I have seen on YouTube. People like to call this the dance of the swans, where you see several police officers that are just trying to tackle a single dangerous criminal. And because the police officers are not armed and they're not allowed to carry weapons in Europe, it causes this hilarious but also dramatic incident where police resources are being wasted just to tackle one guy. And again, like, this movie manages to show what happens when a society becomes so peaceful that they do not have a response when someone just starts ignoring all sorts of rules, regulations, and boundaries. Or at least that's what I can freely express before my message gets deleted like the graffiti on the wall from the movie we're talking. One of the most bizarre predictions seems to be that of no touching, especially at the workplace. You see, in Demolition Man, people do not shake hands anymore. They do not do any sort of contact besides bringing their hands very closely and waving it at each other. In the real world, we notice that a 5-year-old autistic kid is now on a sex registry because his hug was interpreted as sexual harassment. I wish I was making this up, but imagine how cute it is to get a knock at the door from a 5-year-old having to inform you that he lives in the neighborhood and he's on the registry. And I have seen statistics showing that less and less people are hooking up with work colleagues. In fact, it's getting so out of hand that even South Park made an episode where strong women and PC principals do not want the public to know they're dating just because they are colleagues at work. It does seem that the current era is definitely discouraging people from trying to hook up at work simply because you can lose your job very easily if a gesture or a flirt is interpreted the wrong way. All in all, what I liked about this movie is that it shows you cannot have a safe and free society. Freedom allows people to do things that are harmful for them. It allows people to eat fatty foods. It allows people to be obscene. It allows people to be offensive. If you want to take away those things, then you will not have a free society. And you have to remember, unless you're Epstein, the safest place in the world is the solitary confinement in a maximum security prison. And the question is, while you will find safety there, is it really worth the price?